I will start with this. Knowledge of universe workings has no bearing on its existence. Realization of this has probably given us the idea of God as a creator. As our consciousness took shape out of the primordial fog, we began to see two realities. We could see the tangible, physical, those things that we could touch and feel, taste and smell, see with our eyes and hear with our ears. But we also sensed the intangible spiritual in our minds. We sensed those things that control the behavior of the physical, but could not otherwise be detected except through the actions. We saw that living things had a will and could control their actions to some degree. We saw other things that were physical, and they behaved in certain unchanging ways, like a rock always falls when it drops. But we saw other things like volcanoes and the weather, lightning and rain, that didn't behave consistently, but yet there was no evidence that it was alive. This led us to think that there might be some unseen spiritual being whose will was being imposed on the conditions causing them to change. In the beginning, we confused the two realities and lumped them together in our thinking. Mythological stories might have said the evil spirit came upon the world, which would have been their universe, and the sun was smitten. In reality, a volcano might have erupted 500 miles away and produced an ash cloud that blocked a portion of the sunlight in their area. Our reasoning associated human traits with a spiritual God and other lesser spirits in order to explain the physical actions that we were seeing. This is because all variable and inconsistent actions that we had observed were caused by living things with a will. When bad things happened to us physically, we thought that God did that to us directly as a punishment for something we had done, or God was allowing some lesser evil spirit to control the physical circumstances we were in because we had been bad. We thought that God must be behaving like an almighty tyrant, and gave God human traits of anger and vengeance. As civilization developed, religion and politics became prevalent. Certain individuals arose and became very powerful by inserting themselves between God and common people, such that all had to go through them to experience God. In some cases, the political and religious leaders became a physical representation of God here on earth, making all kinds of laws that the people had to follow and condemning those who weren't faithful to death. No one dared to think anything different than they had been indoctrinated to believe. This seems to be the story across the globe where any type of civilization began, from the Eastern Asian countries all the way around to the Americas. Lust for power and control of others always seemed to prevail in a civilized society. As our thinking became more distinct and we were more observant, probably because we had more leisure time, we began to see that some things in the physical reality behave consistently in certain ways, regardless of what we think or do. The quest for truth and the study of natural behavior of things came to be known as science. Even though we didn't know the cause of existence, we were able to establish the natural behavior based on laws that we had formulated from observance. Of course, during this time, there were those who stubbornly clung to the idea of wizards and witches, alchemy, and such, as in the Harry Potter stories. Even some of the religious hierarchies clung to these ideas for fear of losing control and condemned any science that would challenge the religious philosophy of creation as they had interpreted it. Galileo is a good example of this. At this stage now in our evolutionary development, scientists have been able to observe the behavior of all that we sense as physical around us, and have been able to characterize and predict these actions with mathematical models and natural laws that seem to control them. But they still do not know why or how the behavior exists. They don't know what causes gravity or inertia, or what causes time to pass. They don't know what energy is, or why there is a speed of light limit on moving bodies, and how velocity of objects in space affects the apparent time in that space. We have made great strides in the last 150 years in describing the physical behavior of the universe, but the cause of the actions is still unknown. In spite of that, some scientists have become arrogant and have made proclamations that God does not have to exist. But what about our own existence? What are we really? Are we just an arrangement of elements? Has our consciousness and awareness of existence come from the natural unchanging laws of physics? I think the answer is no. There is evidence everywhere of the spiritual. Any living existence has a spirit and can somewhat sense and react to changing environments. It's called evolution. The tiniest little fuzzy seed of a sycamore tree is alive and knows when the conditions are right for it to sprout. It knows which way is up and down. And its intangible genetic software, which is a sacred creation of the Creator and not to be tampered with, knows how to use the elements and physical components of the earth, and with the help of energy from the sun, it makes a beautiful towering tree, and it makes improved versions of itself to continue the life. The spiritual part of us resides in the ever-present. We are not alive in the memories of yesterday, nor in the anticipation of tomorrow. We are alive now, and a part of us has been alive from the very beginning of life on this earth. The living spark of life was passed to me from my father and my mother. Their parents passed the life to them, and their parents before them, all the way back to the very beginning. And if you believe in evolution, all life is connected from the very beginning. Truly, life on this earth is like a big family. If you look inside the DNA in each of our millions of cells, you will find vestiges of primitive life DNA in them. And think of this. Our consciousness and self-awareness is what we think of as our being. But there are millions of little cells in our body that are alive, and each of these little cells has a spirit that causes it to be alive and to be doing specific functions, even sacrificing itself to keep us alive. We may never know the answers to these three basic questions. What are we? How did we get here? And what will become of us? But we must remain ever humble and grateful that we have been allowed to exist at the pinnacle of consciousness that has been so far, and must never think that we are in control to do as we please of the living paradise that we have been given. Thank you.